Midnight is a dangerous hour for promises. In the dark of April 26, 1986, inside a concrete building near the new Soviet city of Pripyat, a team of tired operators tried to keep one. The promise was simple on paper. Prove that when a reactor's turbines spin down, they can still generate enough power for a few seconds to keep the cooling water moving until the backup generators start. A safety test, a box to tick. But the night was already off script, and the machine they were testing did not forgive improv. All day the test had been delayed. The regional grid needed electricity, so the reactor, Unit 4 of Chernobyl, kept running at high output. Hours slipped. The crew changed. By the time the go-ahead came, it was past midnight. The plant was an RBMK, a big Soviet design, graphite in its core and water rushing through its channels. Think of the graphite as the part that keeps the chain reaction steady, and the water as both the coolant and, in this design, a kind of brake pedal. Boiling water makes bubbles. In most reactors, bubbles slow things down. In this one, bubbles did the opposite. They stepped on the gas. To run the test, the crew had to hold the reactor at low power. But low power has its own trap. A short-lived gas called xenon builds up inside the fuel like fog on a windshield. It soaks up neutrons and chokes the reaction. Earlier, the power had been dropped too fast and too far, and the reactor nearly stalled. To fight the xenon fog, the operators pulled out more control rods than the rules allowed. Long metal spears that normally push the reaction down. In the control room, their meters were calm enough to give them courage. The water pumps roared. Steam drifted in thin whips across the turbine hall. On the walls, safety systems were switched off one by one because the test required it. Alarms that would have said stop were told to stay quiet. Just after 1:23 in the morning, they began the experiment. The order was simple. Cut steam to the turbine and let it coast. As the turbine slowed, the pumps lost muscle. Less water pushed through the core. Water started to boil inside the channels and turned to steam. Here is the dangerous secret of this reactor. In those seconds, as bubbles formed, power didn't go down. It surged. Imagine losing traction and having the car accelerate anyway. Dials that had inched now jumped. The reaction raced ahead of hands and buttons. The shift leader hit the emergency shutdown. In Soviet reactors, that command was called AZ-5. You push it when you want everything to end. All the control rods drive back in at once. But the RBMK hid one last trick. The very tips of those rods were graphite. When you insert them into water-filled channels, the first thing they do is displace water, the brake, and replace it with graphite, the thing that keeps the reaction going. For the first few seconds of the shutdown, the reactor got a spike of extra power. It was a flaw buried in design drawings and seldom felt in practice. That night it mattered. The power shot far beyond what the instruments could read. Fuel channels flashed to steam, pipes tore, and the reactor lid, a steel plate that weighed as much as a small ship, lifted. The first explosion threw it aside and pulverized the building above. Seconds later came another, likely from hydrogen touched off by torn water lines and blazing graphite. The roof opened like a wound. Graphite from the core, now literally on fire, hurled into the air and scattered on the plant roofs like a storm of black burning bricks. Outside, the night was the color of welding arcs. A blue glow hung over the building, air ionizing in a hot, invisible storm. Firefighters arrived with no idea what they were stepping into. They dragged hoses up ladders, kicked aside the glowing blocks, and sprayed water into heat that felt wrong even through gear. Their radios crackled, their boots stuck in tar. Some joked to steady their hands. Many of those men would be gone within weeks. They were told there was a roof fire. In a way, there was. No one on the line was told the roof was made of the core. In the control room, time broke into fragments. The people who had pushed the buttons and pulled the rods were not cartoon villains. They were human beings doing what they thought the situation demanded, in a system that rewarded obedience, hurried the schedule, and hid its brittleness behind confidence. They had trained on a machine that was not fully the machine in front of them. Manuals did not warn that emergency shutdown could bite. The night shift inherited a test they did not plan and a reactor that had been bent out of safe shape by delays and pressure from above. By morning, the wind picked up and carried the plant's breath across Belarus and farther into Europe. In Pripyat, a beautiful new city with playgrounds and tidy apartments, children walked to school under a clear sky. Buses rolled. The Ferris wheel waited for a holiday opening that would never come. The invisible didn't announce itself. It settled on jackets and hair. It went into lungs. It made its own quiet map of exposure on a place that had not yet been told to be afraid. Investigations would later unwind the chain. They showed a reactor whose physics turned boiling into acceleration. They showed a test held at a bad time, with safety systems inhibited, at low power, with xenon thick in the fuel. They showed a crucial design flaw in the control rods that turned the first second of shutdown into a spark. They showed a culture that prized production, punished delay, and assumed systems were fine because they had been fine yesterday. Every step made sense to someone in the room. The sum did not. It's tempting to cast Chernobyl as a single moment of madness. It works better as a mirror. Systems fail where design, training, and pressure meet. They fail when a schedule outruns a checklist. They fail when a line in a manual is missing, because the people who wrote it didn't know what the night would ask. They fail when the emergency button, the thing you trust to save you, hides a sting on its tip. Stand in the empty apartments now and open a drawer. The air smells like dust and paper. On a school blackboard, equations still bleed faintly through chalk. In the plant, the ruined reactor has a new shell around it, a grand arc of steel, as if a bandage could teach us something about skin. The lesson is not mysterious. Power demands humility. Numbers do not care how proud we are, and midnight will always test our promises. What happened at Chernobyl was not fate. It was a chain of human choices wrapped around a design that amplified their smallest errors. A test meant to prove a margin ended up erasing it. In the end, it was not the size of the machine that failed us, but the thinness of our imagination about how it could fail. Remember that. The next time a plan looks tidy and the clock says it's late and the box is waiting to be ticked, the most dangerous hour for promises is still midnight.